sound wasn't just knocking, it was an assault. A pounding so violent the walls shook and the air itself seemed to tremble. In the dead of night, a family home in Chesapeake, Virginia, became the stage for something no neighbor would ever believe. At 9:47 on a quiet Thursday, retired Navy SEAL Terrence McCall sat in his living room, still in his work shirt, staring at a plate of cooling leftovers. Upstairs, his wife Janine brushed her teeth, ready for bed. Their teenage son bent over his homework, pencil scratching across paper. Everything ordinary until the pounding came again. "Open up. You're in violation." Not the voice of police. Not the concerned call of a neighbor. This voice was sharp, commanding, angry. Terrence froze, instincts whispering danger. Through the peephole he saw three men. Not officers, not thieves, but members of the Homeowners Association, wearing jackets with the HOA logo. Only these men weren't holding clipboards. One already had his boot braced against the door, ready to kick. In that instant, Terrence's dinner turned cold, but his training ran hot. He had faced insurgents overseas, but never imagined the battlefield would follow him home. And as the door crashed open, splinters flying, Terrence realized this wasn't about cars or citations. This was about something bigger, power. But these men had just chosen the wrong house. Before we continue, ask yourself, what happens when an HOA that thinks it's above the law runs headfirst into a Navy SEAL who refuses to back down? Stay with me, because what unfolds will shock you, anger you, and remind you why standing together matters. The door gave way with a violent crack. With splintered, metal hinges tore loose, and suddenly three strangers stood in Terrence McCall's living room. Their jackets bore the neat embroidery of the Chesapeake Pines HOA, but their eyes told a different story, cold, unblinking, full of intent. Janine screamed from upstairs. Their son froze mid-scribble, staring wide-eyed at the sudden chaos. "You were warned, McCall?" barked the man in front, a broad-shouldered figure with a clipboard tucked under his arm like a weapon. "Your truck in the driveway, the unapproved fence, the lawn, 3 violations. We gave you notice." Terrence rose slowly from his chair. Calm, controlled. The kind of calm that made his enemies overseas flinch before a fight. "You just kicked in my door? Over grass?" His voice was low, steady, dangerous. One of the men smirked. "We own this neighborhood. You signed the agreement. You don't comply, you don't stay." The absurdity hung in the air like poison. A retired Navy SEAL, decorated and disciplined, now under siege in his own home, not by foreign enemies, but by the very association meant to keep order. Terrence's training screamed, assess, contain, respond. His family was upstairs. His honor was on the line, and his patience had just been shattered. The man took a step closer, jabbing a finger at Terrence's chest. "Last chance. Submit or we make you." Terrence's hand curled into a fist, every muscle coiled like a spring. He gave a warning the intruders didn't hear until too late. "Gentlemen, you just made your biggest mistake." The room went silent for half a heartbeat. Then everything exploded. The leader thrust his chest forward, trying to intimidate, but Terrence moved first. In a blur of motion, the retired SEAL grabbed the man's wrist, twisted hard, and slammed him face first into the dining table. The clipboard clattered to the floor, papers scattering like leaves in a storm. The second intruder lunged, swinging wild with a fist. Terrence ducked, pivoted, and drove his elbow into the man's ribs with the force of a battering ram. A choked grunt filled the air as the man staggered, clutching his side. Janine screamed again from upstairs. Their son's voice cracked, "Dad, stay back." Terrence barked, his voice both command and promise. The third intruder froze at the threshold, suddenly realizing this wasn't a paperwork dispute. It was a war zone, and they had just stepped onto the wrong battlefield. He reached for something hidden beneath his jacket, metal glinting. Not a gun, a taser. Electricity hissed as he powered it on. Sparks danced in the dim light. Terrence locked eyes with him. "You better hope that thing works." The taser wielder sneered. "Oh, it will." But Terrence wasn't the kind of man who waited to find out. He shifted his weight, every fiber of his body calculating the distance, the angle, the outcome. In less than a second, he was ready to strike again, this time not just to defend, but to send a message. And that message was simple. You don't invade a warrior's home and walk away unscathed. The crackle of electricity filled the living room, sharp and menacing. The third intruder tightened his grip on the taser, edging closer, his confidence returning now that he held the upper hand, or so he thought. On the ground, old man, he sneered. HOA rules aren't optional. Terrence's jaw clenched. Old man? Maybe to them. But to his brothers in arms, he was still a SEAL, forged in the crucible of war, trained to end threats in seconds. The taser lunged forward, a streak of sparks aiming for his chest. Terrence shifted sideways with surgical precision. The prongs sliced air, missing by inches. In that same heartbeat, he caught the attacker's wrist, twisted, and redirected the weapon. A scream tore through the house as the taser discharged into its own wielder. His body convulsed violently, legs buckling, eyes rolling back before he collapsed to the carpet in a twitching heap. The smell of burnt fabric rose in the air. The second intruder, still clutching his ribs, staggered forward in desperation. Terrence countered with a crushing knee to the gut that sent the man collapsing beside his partner. 2 down, 1 groaning, 1 twitching. Only the leader remained, his face pressed against the table where Terrence pinned him moments earlier. Blood dripped from his split lip, staining the paperwork scattered on the floor. You can't fight the association, he spat, defiance cutting through pain. We'll take everything, your house, your life. You're nothing without us. Terrence leaned close, his voice low enough to chill bone. Without you, I'm free. And tonight, I'm taking my freedom back. The leader coughed, blood smearing across his chin as he tried to push himself up from the table. Terrence's grip tightened on his collar, holding him in place. The man wasn't just beaten. He was humiliated, and yet his eyes burned with something darker than pain. You think this ends with us? He rasped, spitting blood onto the floor. We're just the beginning. The association owns this neighborhood. The board, they've got the cops in their pocket, the courts too. You lay a hand on us, you're finished. They'll bury you under so many fines, so many lawsuits, you won't know which way is up. Terrence's jaw flexed. He'd heard threats before. Terrorists swearing vengeance, warlords promising retribution. But this one hit different. This wasn't whispered in a desert battlefield. This was inside his own home. Upstairs, Janine's trembling voice cut through the tension. Terrence, please, what's happening? He looked up toward the staircase, his heart tightening. It's all right. I've got it under control. But in truth, he didn't, not yet. The leader chuckled, coughing between words. You think your training makes you untouchable? Paper is stronger than bullets here, McCall. You'll see. They'll strip everything you love, piece by piece. Tonight was just a warning. Terrence's fist curled tighter in the man's shirt. A warning? This was a declaration of war. And if what this thug said was true, it wasn't just about lawns or fences, it was about control. About power. About breaking good men until they submitted. Terrence had faced warlords. He had faced insurgents. Now he faced something quieter, but maybe just as dangerous. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules. They were enforcing dominion. Terrence dragged the leader to the wall and dropped him like dead weight beside his unconscious partners. His breathing slowed, controlled. 3 men neutralized. For now. His training told him the next step was clear. Call law enforcement, secure the scene, protect the family. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Chesapeake Police? What's your emergency? This is Terrence McCall. My home's just been broken into by 3 armed men. I need units dispatched immediately. The dispatcher paused. Too long. Then her tone shifted, flat, almost rehearsed. Sir, we have no record of an ongoing threat at your address. Are you sure this isn't a civil matter with your HOA? Terrence's brow furrowed. A civil matter? They kicked in my door. They attacked me. My family's inside this house. Send a cruiser. I'll log your concern, she said. But as per directives, any disputes with the Chesapeake Pines Homeowners Association fall under property governance, not police jurisdiction. Click. The line went dead. For a moment, Terrence stared at his phone, disbelief hardening into fury. The dispatcher's words echoed. Directives. Not law. Not justice. Directives. From the floor, the HOA leader laughed weakly, blood bubbling in his mouth. Told you, cops don't touch us. They know better. You're alone. Terrence clenched his fists, the realization crashing over him like cold water. This wasn't just a break-in. It was a system, a machine, and the police were part of it. Janine appeared halfway down the stairs, eyes wide with fear. They're not coming, are they? Terrence shook his head slowly. No, we're on our own. And with that truth, the fight had only just begun. The silence in the house was broken only by the groans of the beaten intruders. Janine clutched the railing, trembling, her son peeking out from behind her legs. Terrence met their eyes, and in that instant, the soldier inside him reawakened fully. This wasn't about grass height or paint colors or HOA bylaws. This was war on his doorstep. He moved swiftly, pulling zip ties from the hall closet, tools he always kept around. Each intruder's wrists were bound tight, their ankles secured. No loose ends, no chances. Then Terrence began his real work, assessing the battlefield. The HOA wasn't a nuisance anymore. It was an enemy force. They had infiltration, the cops, psychological warfare, fear and fines, and boots on the ground, these thugs. If they were willing to storm his house tonight, what came next? Surveillance? Sabotage? Worse? Janine's voice quivered. What are you going to do? He looked at her, steady and unflinching. What I was trained to do. Break them down piece by piece. They came after the wrong family. The leader chuckled through swollen lips. You can't fight paper with fists, McCall. The association's bigger than you. Stronger. Smarter. Terrence crouched, his gaze like steel. Then I'll fight them the only way I know how. You see, I don't just know combat, I know strategy. I know pressure points. And every system, no matter how powerful, has a weakness. He rose, scanning the scattered paperwork on the floor. Pages stamped with signatures, names, committee approvals, breadcrumbs leading upward. The HOA thought they were untouchable. But Terrence McCall was about to remind them. Even giants can fall if you cut them at the knees. The three intruders squirmed against the zip ties, their bravado leaking away with every passing minute. Terrence stood over them like a storm held in human form. Calm on the outside, but lightning ready to strike. He crouched low, fixing his eyes on the leader. You kicked in my door, threatened my family, and hid behind paperwork. Now you're gonna tell me everything. Who sent you? The leader spat blood onto the carpet, sneering. The board doesn't answer to you. Terrence didn't flinch. Instead, he turned his gaze to the second intruder, the one clutching his ribs. His breathing was shallow, pained. Weakest link. Terrence leaned close, voice low but razor sharp. You've got two choices. Stay loyal and suffer with him, or talk and walk away breathing. The man's eyes flicked nervously between Terrence and his boss. His lips trembled. It's not just the board. There's someone else. Fixer. Name's Clay. He handles the dirty work, the threats, the break-ins. The board signs, but he delivers. The leader snapped his head toward him, fury blazing. Shut your mouth. But the dam had broken. The man kept talking, desperation spilling out. They keep files on everyone in the neighborhood. Bank records, job histories, secrets. That's how they control people. If you fight back, they ruin you. Janine gasped from the stairs. Even their son's small voice whispered, Dad, what if they have files on us? Terrence's eyes hardened. They probably did. Which meant this wasn't just about defending his home anymore. It was about burning the entire rotten system to the ground. And Clay would be the first to fall. The name echoed in Terrence's head like a target painted on the horizon. Clay. Not a board member, not a bureaucrat, an enforcer. The kind of man who thrived in the shadows, who left bruises where bylaws couldn't reach. Terrence rose slowly, towering over the bound men. Where do I find him? The rib-bruised intruder hesitated, then muttered. He runs out of the old HOA office by the clubhouse. Midnight meetings, unmarked cars, always in and out. If you go looking for him, you won't come back. Terrence allowed himself the faintest grin. Then he's exactly where I need to be. The leader snarled, blood dripping from his split lip. You're signing your death warrant, McCall. Clay isn't just muscle. He's the board's knife in the dark. You won't even see it coming. Terrence leaned down, voice steady as stone. I've lived in the dark. I know it better than he ever will. He turned to Janine, who still stood frozen on the stairs. Lock the doors. Stay with our boy. Don't open for anyone but me. Her lips parted. Terrence, you can't go out there alone. Not against them. He kissed her forehead, a rare tenderness amid the chaos. I've been outnumbered my whole life, but I've never been outmatched. As he slipped into the night, the cool Virginia air wrapped around him like a cloak. The HOA thought they controlled this neighborhood. They thought they owned fear. But tonight, Terrence McCall was hunting, and his praise name was Clay. The streets of Chesapeake Pines were unervingly quiet, each manicured lawn glowing pale under the street lamps. Terrence moved like a shadow, every footstep measured, every sound absorbed into the night. Years of Navy SEAL operations came back to him instinctively. This wasn't a suburb anymore. This was a battlefield. Ahead, the HOA clubhouse loomed. Once a cheerful community center for barbecues and book clubs, it now radiated something sinister. A pair of black SUVs idled in the lot, engines low, their windows tinted to secrecy. Terrence crouched low in the hedges, observing. Two guards, big, expressionless men in dark jackets, stood by the doors. Not residents, not volunteers, hired muscle. He slipped closer, hugging the tree line. Through the blinds of an office window, he caught flickers of movement. Men in suits, shuffling papers across a long table. At the head sat a broad-shouldered figure with a scar running down his cheek. No name tag, no hesitation in his movements. This had to be Clay. Terrence adjusted his angle, watching carefully. Clay spread files across the table, each stamped with names of residents. Pages of surveillance photos, bank statements, even medical records. The board wasn't just enforcing HOA rules, they were stockpiling leverage. One of the men laughed. McCall's tough, but he'll fold. They all do. He's just another file waiting to be written. Terrence's jaw clenched. No, he wasn't another file. He was the hand that erased them. From the clubhouse, Clay's voice carried sharp and cold. Bring me his family. If McCall won't bend, we'll break him. Terrence's blood ran hot. The hunt had just turned into a race against time. Terrence's pulse slowed, his body shifting into the calm rhythm of a mission. Clay wanted his family? Then Clay would never leave this clubhouse unscarred. He melted back into the shadows of the lot, sliding behind the black SUVs. Their engines purred, ready for quick extraction. Perfect. He pulled a multi-tool from his pocket, slicing through brake lines with surgical precision. A quiet hiss of leaking fluid whispered his message. You won't be driving anywhere tonight. Next came communications. He eased open the back door of one SUV. Inside, a police-grade radio sat wired to a secure channel, proof of the collusion. Terrence ripped out the mic, severing wires, and pocketed the frequency card. Evidence for later. A guard lit a cigarette near the clubhouse doors, his glow a beacon in the dark. Terrence moved low, fast, behind him. A sharp armbar choke, a silent struggle. Then the man slumped unconscious in the shrubs. Terrence dragged him deeper into shadow, stripping his earpiece. Now he was wired in. Through the receiver, Clay's voice snapped. Move out in 10. Bring me McCall's wife and kid. Tonight. Terrence's stomach nodded. They were coming now. He pressed against the wall, weighing his choices. He could storm the clubhouse, confront Clay head-on, but that meant risking everything in one strike. Or he could play this like the SEAL he was. Stay patient, dismantle their operation piece by piece, bleed them dry before they even knew they were dying. From inside, laughter erupted. Papers shuffled. Car doors opened. Terrence's grip tightened around the earpiece. The hunt was accelerating, and the predators didn't know the real predator was already among them. The clubhouse doors swung open, and Clay's men filed out in pairs, each one a slab of muscle dressed in dark coats. They moved with military discipline, but to Terrence, their patterns were full of holes. He saw every exposed angle, every blind spot. One guard checked the SUV. "Something's wrong, engine's dead." "Take the backup," another barked. Terrence smirked from the shadows. The backup was dead too. Already, their plan was bleeding. Clay emerged last, towering, scar glinting under the streetlight. His voice was low, commanding. "McCall's house. Wife and kid first. Make it loud if you have to." The group split into two. One van full of men rolled out of the lot, the other prepared to follow. Terrence's choice was instant. Shadow the first convoy. If they reached his home, his family would be in danger. He slipped onto a motorcycle chained near the clubhouse, cut the lock, and ghosted behind them down the winding suburban streets. Headlights cut across manicured lawns as the convoy rumbled toward its target. At the next intersection, Terrence made his move. He accelerated, swerving in front of the van, tossing a spike strip, military issue, folded neatly from his old kit. Tires exploded in unison. The van fishtailed, screeching to a halt, sparks flying. Before the men could react, Terrence was already there, helmet off, eyes cold. He yanked open the driver's door, dragging the thug into the street. "Change of plans," Terrence growled. "We're not going to my house. We're going to yours." The stunned silence of the trapped enforcers told him all he needed to know. For the first time, they realized the HOA wasn't hunting him. He was hunting them. The crippled van hissed on its rims, its thugs trapped inside like caged animals. Terrence moved with surgical precision, every strike a memory from years of raids that never made the news. The first man lunged out of the passenger side. Terrence caught his wrist, twisted, and drove him into the hood with a bone-cracking thud. The second came swinging, a tire iron, sloppy, desperate. Terrence ducked low, drove his elbow into the man's ribs, then snapped the weapon free and hurled it into the third's jaw. Within seconds, the street was littered with groaning bodies. No wasted movements, no mercy, just efficiency. Terrence yanked the sliding van door open. Two men inside raised pistols, eyes wide. He fired first, two suppressed shots from the compact sidearm he'd lifted off the unconscious guard earlier. Muzzles flashed, and then there was silence. Breathing steady, Terrence scanned the van. Boxes filled the cargo hold, laptops, binders, and hard drives. Evidence. The HOA wasn't just terrorizing homeowners. They were running a full-blown surveillance state. From the earpiece came Clay's voice, sharper now. "Convoy 1 status. Report." Terrence pressed the mic button, his voice low, mocking. "Convoy 1's busy. Try again later." A pause. Then Clay's growl. "McCall." Terrence smirked into the dark. "That's right. You know my name. Now you'll know my war." He ripped the earpiece free, tossed it onto the unconscious driver, and mounted the motorcycle. The hunt wasn't over. He had Clay's attention now. But attention cut both ways. The motorcycle growled beneath Terrence as he cut through the night, the stolen hard drives and files strapped tight to his back. Every turn of the suburban streets felt sharper now, every dark window a potential set of eyes. Chesapeake Pines wasn't a neighborhood anymore. It was a war zone disguised as picket fences. He reached his cul-de-sac, lights dimmed. His home stood silent, blinds drawn just as he had told his wife. Inside, he found Emily crouched in the living room, clutching their son. Relief washed her face when she saw him, but it quickly hardened at the sight of blood spattered on his sleeve. "Are we safe?" she whispered. "For now," Terrence said, laying the evidence across the dining table. Bank records, hacked emails, surveillance photos of nearly every homeowner, including their family. "They've been watching us all. They know everything, debts, secrets, weak spots. They've been running the HOA like a cartel." Emily's hands trembled as she flipped through the files. This This could bury them. Terrence nodded. If I get it to the right people. But if Clay knows I have this. A sharp buzz cut through the house. The doorbell. Terrence froze, hand reaching for his weapon. Through the peephole. Two men in security uniforms. Casual smiles masking predatory eyes. They knocked politely, as though this was just another HOA visit about lawn height or mailbox paint. Emily's grip tightened on their son. Terrence's voice was ice. Stay back. This isn't a visit. It's a warning. The wolves were already at the door. The polite knock turned into a heavier pounding. Terrence stayed motionless, weapon leveled at the door. His instincts screamed. These weren't salesmen, they were scouts. Probing, testing his defenses. Mr. McCall, one of them called, tone cheerful but hollow. Just a routine check-in from the association. We noticed your garbage bins weren't aligned properly. Gotta keep things in order. You know? Emily's eyes widened. She knew their bins had been perfectly placed. This was theater. Terrence signaled for her to take their son into the back room. Then he spoke, calm and steady, his voice carrying through the wood. Garbage bins at this hour? Try harder. Silence. Then a chuckle from outside. Fair enough. Why don't you open the door, and we'll discuss a bigger matter. The doorknob rattled. They were done pretending. Terrence backed into the hallway, flicked a switch. Instantly, the front porch lights cut, throwing the men into darkness. His house was rigged, not with gadgets, but with the simplest of traps. Mirrors angled to reflect movement, furniture placed to funnel intruders into kill zones. The window shattered first. A boot came through, followed by a man's torso. Terrence fired once, clean, and the body crumpled across the sill. The second tried the door. It burst inward, but Terrence was already flanking. He drove the man headfirst into the wall, the crack of drywall echoing through the house. A swift chokehold silenced him before a cry could escape. Breathing steady, Terrence dragged both bodies out of sight. He glanced at Emily, who clutched their son, her face pale but resolute. They won't stop, she whispered. I know, Terrence said, his jaw set. So neither will I. The war had officially reached his doorstep. The HOA didn't waste time. Within an hour, Chesapeake Pines transformed. Patrol SUVs crept along every cul-de-sac, their headlights sweeping across driveways like search beams. Drones buzzed overhead, small but armed with cameras. Floodlights snapped on at intersections, turning quiet streets into a prison yard. Clay's voice carried across the neighborhood PA system, normally reserved for community announcements. Tonight it was something else. Attention residents. Due to increased security concerns, all families are required to remain indoors until further notice. Any violations will be met with consequences. Behind the official wording, Terrence heard the truth. A manhunt. For him. From the upstairs window, Emily whispered, They've trapped everyone. The fear in her eyes wasn't for herself. It was for the neighbors who had no idea what kind of monsters ran their HOA. Terrence scanned the patrols, memorizing routes, timing their sweeps. He wasn't panicked, he was calculating. Lockdowns are cages, he muttered. And cages have weak points. On the table, the evidence files still glared back at him, heavy with leverage. If he could get them out past the barricades, the HOA was finished. But moving them and protecting his family would require precision, not brute force. A drone passed close, its camera tilting toward their house. Terrence pulled Emily and their son away from the window, heart steady but hands clenched. They know I'm here, he said. Outside, a spotlight froze on his lawn. Over the loudspeaker, Clay's voice boomed. Colder now. Terrence McCall, step outside. Or we'll bring the neighborhood down with you. Terrence ignored the booming ultimatum outside. Meeting Clay head-on now would be suicide, and worse, it would put Emily and their son in the crossfire. This fight had to be on his terms. He moved swiftly through the house, gathering what he needed. A black duffel, the drives, a stripped-down rifle, and 2 smoke canisters left over from his private stash. Emily caught his arm. You're going out there? Not through the front, he said, eyes steady. They expect me loud. I'll move silent. She wanted to argue, but the steel in his voice cut it off. He squeezed her hand once, then slipped into the crawlspace hatch beneath the stairs. It opened into a forgotten maintenance tunnel, a relic from when the neighborhood's drainage system had been built. Few even knew it existed. Above, patrols closed in, boots crunching across lawns. A drone hovered past his window, its camera pausing, as if sniffing the air for him. But Terrence was already beneath them, a ghost sliding through the belly of Chesapeake pines. He emerged blocks away, near the retention pond, shadows covering him. A patrol SUV idled nearby, 2 guards scanning the cul-de-sac with rifles slung casual, too confident in their lockdown net. Terrence marked their patterns, waited, then moved. The first guard dropped silently, a chokehold and twist ending his shift forever. The second barely turned before Terrence was on him, knife flashing once. Clean. He stashed the bodies under the SUV, hijacked the comms radio, and whispered into the channel with perfect mimicry of the dead man's voice. Sector 4 clear. No sign of McCall. Static answered. Then Clay's reply, gravelly, keep looking. He's here. He doesn't leave this neighborhood alive. Terrence smirked into the dark. Wrong, Clay. I'm already inside your blind spot. The stolen comms radio crackled at Terrence's hip as he moved deeper into the lockdown grid. Patrol patterns were sharp but predictable, military precision softened by arrogance. Clay believed the cage was airtight. Terrence intended to prove him wrong. From a rooftop perch above the pond, he studied the grid. Every 5 minutes, patrols rotated sectors, drones shifted altitude, and checkpoints scanned IDs of anyone foolish enough to step outside. It wasn't a neighborhood anymore, it was an occupied zone. Terrence's fingers tightened around the evidence drive. He could make a break for the outer perimeter, smuggle it past, and expose the HOA, but if he ran now, Clay would tighten the leash and no one inside would ever escape. So he chose a third option: break the system from within. The first strike was silent. A drone skimmed low. Terrence snagged it with a weighted cord, dragged it down, and gutted its camera. With a few tweaks, he looped its feed, showing empty streets while patrols walked right into his traps. Next, he planted smoke charges in key alleys, small enough to confuse infrared sweeps but not enough to draw suspicion yet. Every move was measured sabotage, cutting invisible holes in Clay's net. Over the radio, frustrated chatter began. Sector 3, confirm eyes? Negative. Feeds are clean. Patrol 6, we've got static again. Anyone else? Terrence allowed himself a cold smile. The cage was breaking. Soon, it wouldn't just be him slipping through, it would be the whole neighborhood waking up. But Clay wasn't blind. A new voice cut across the comms, sharp and venomous. Whoever's tampering with my grid, you've got one chance to come out, or I'll start pulling families from their homes until you do. Terrence's heart went still. The war had just turned personal for everyone. Clay's threat slithered through the comms. Families would pay. It wasn't bluster. Terrence knew the man too well. A predator without limits, happy to bleed innocents to flush out his prey. Terrence crouched in the shadows, pulse steady. He could keep sabotaging the net, slipping closer to escape. But then the HOA thugs would drag terrified neighbors from their homes, parade them as bait, maybe worse. The thought of Emily and their boy seeing that horror was enough to snap his choice. He exhaled slow. Fine, Clay. You want me? Then you get me, but on my terms. He keyed the stolen radio, pitching his voice into a low growl. Leave the families out of this. You want McCall? I'll meet you. Static. Then Clay's chuckle, oily and triumphant. Finally. Knew you couldn't hide forever. Be at the clubhouse in 20 minutes. Come alone, or the cul-de-sac becomes a graveyard. Terrence killed the line already moving. He wouldn't walk in blind. On the way, he rigged 2 of his smoke charges near the patrol SUV depot, insurance for the escape route. Then he palmed the gutted drone's transmitter, rewired to piggyback their feed. If he played this right, the HOA cameras would show him marching straight into the clubhouse, while in reality he took a side entrance they'd never guard. As he slipped closer, the neighborhood clubhouse loomed like a fortress, its lights blazing, shadows moving inside. This was Clay's throne room, the nest of the cancer-poisoning Chesapeake pines. Terrence whispered into the night, to himself as much as to the absent soldiers he used to command. Time to end this war where it began. The clubhouse was no longer the cozy community hub it once pretended to be. Tonight, it pulsed with floodlights and armed patrols, the HOA's private army buzzing like hornets. Through the gutted drone's hacked feed, Terrence saw the illusion of himself, a decoy silhouette projected on camera, marching straight to the front doors. The guards tightened formation, all eyes there. Perfect. In reality, Terrence ghosted along the side wall, hugging shadows until he reached a service hatch near the kitchen vents. With a quick twist of his multi-tool, he slipped inside. The air smelled of polish and chlorine from the pool, masking his presence. He moved low, silent, a predator in familiar terrain. Inside the main hall, voices carried. Clay's tone was sharp, commanding. He's coming. Double the guards. When he steps in, drop him. I want McCall's body on display. Let every family here know what happens when you bite the hand that feeds. Terrence's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about killing him, it was about spectacle domination. Clay wanted fear carved into the neighborhood's memory. Terrence climbed the balcony overlooking the hall, eyes scanning the setup. 20 men at least. Rifles, body armor, radios. And Clay, standing proud at the center like a king on a rotten throne. He thumbed the smoke detonator in his pocket, the one he'd planted earlier near their SUV depot. One press, and chaos would ripple outside, pulling guards away. Another press, and the main hall would vanish into choking fog. But another option burned in his mind. Step into the light, face Clay directly, and drag him into his own trap with words sharp enough to cut steel. Below, Clay laughed with his men, oblivious. McCall thinks he's a soldier, but tonight, he dies a pawn. Terrence's thumb hovered over the detonator. One press, and the clubhouse would dissolve into chaos. But looking down at Clay, swaggering like a warlord in front of his men, Terrence felt a different fire. Sometimes the deadliest weapon wasn't an explosion. It was truth sharpened into a blade. He slipped the detonator back into his pocket and stepped from the balcony shadows. His voice boomed across the hall. You talk about pawns, Clay, but I see nothing but slaves. You parade as a king, but you're just a coward hiding behind paperwork and thugs. The room froze. 20 rifles snapped up, barrels trained on him. But Clay raised a hand, grinning wide. There he is, the ghost of Chesapeake Pines. Brave enough to show his face. Terrence's eyes never left him. Brave enough to fight for people you only bleed dry. They don't fear me, Clay, they fear you. And when the lights go out, they'll remember who locked their families in cages. Murmurs rippled among the guards. Doubt, faint but dangerous. Clay's grin tightened. He barked, he's stalling. Don't listen. He's a deserter who ran from his own men. And you? Terrence cut in, voice like a blade. Ran from the truth. You built an empire of fines, threats, and secrets. Tell them what's on these drives, Clay. Tell them how much blood you've already spilled to keep your throne. He held up the evidence drive, gleaming in the overhead lights. Every eye flicked toward it, every ear strained. Clay's mask cracked for just a moment, fury flashing. Kill him, now. But hesitation lingered in the room. The men weren't as certain anymore. Terrence smiled coldly. The real battle had begun. The air was thick with silence. Rifles still leveled at Terrence, but fingers hesitating on the triggers. Clay's command had cracked the room, but not broken it. Doubt was a contagion, and Terrence had seeded it well. He palmed the detonator in his pocket and pressed once. Outside, the muffled thump of explosions ripped through the night. Alarms shrieked, glass rattled, and a plume of smoke rose over the SUV depot. The guards jolted, confusion slicing through their ranks. Terrence's voice thundered from the balcony. That's your empire burning, Clay. While you hide in here, your kingdom collapses outside. Your cages are cracking. Your soldiers are waking up. Clay spun, shouting into his radio. Sector 4, Report. Sector 4. Damn it, answer me. Only static hissed back. Terrence pressed again. Canisters hidden in the hall vents popped, spewing dense smoke across the floor. Panic spread fast, coughing, shouts, rifle swinging blind. The soldiers weren't unified now. They were prey inside a storm. Clay's fury boiled over. Find him. Kill him. He tore a pistol from his belt, scanning the smoke. Terrence moved with purpose, dropping low, weaving through the fog he'd engineered. To the guards, he was a ghost. Appearing, vanishing, a whisper of boots on tile. One soldier caught a glimpse of him, finger twitching on the trigger, but hesitated, the echo of Terrence's words gnawing at him. Slaves. Cages. Terrence's hand brushed the drive at his chest. The evidence was safe, the net collapsing, the myth of Clay unraveling in real time. All he had to do now was cut the head off the snake. Through the smoke he saw Clay's outline. Alone, frantic, pistol raised, mask slipping. The war was down to 2 men. The smoke swirled like a battlefield fog, disorienting, choking, erasing the edges of the world. Terrence moved through it with the calm precision of a soldier who had seen worse in deserts and jungles. Every footstep was measured, every breath timed to the rhythm of the chaos he'd unleashed. Clay's voice slashed through the haze, half command, half desperation. You think this changes anything, McCall? HOA or Army, power's the same. Fear is the same. People want control, and I am control. Terrence's silhouette emerged 10 feet away, solid, unflinching. His voice was steady. No, Clay, you're not control, you're a parasite, and parasites don't rule. They get cut out. Clay snapped toward the voice, pistol raised. The shot cracked, grazing Terrence's arm, but Terrence didn't falter. He lunged forward, knocking the weapon aside. The pistol clattered across tile as the 2 men collided in the fog, fists and fury replacing bullets and commands. Clay fought like a brawler, wild swings fueled by arrogance and rage. Terrence countered like a soldier, each strike deliberate, efficient. A knee to the ribs, an elbow to the jaw. Clay staggered but still spat blood and venom. You can't kill me. You kill me and they'll make me a martyr. You think they'll follow you? They'll scatter. They'll beg for the order I gave them. Terrence pinned him against the wall, breath hot, words sharper than his fists. They don't need another tyrant. They need the truth. From the smoke, a dozen shapes loomed, guards, coughing, confused, watching. Their rifles hung low now, uncertain. The battle wasn't just fists anymore. It was witness. And Terrence knew. How this ended, here and now, would decide if the neighborhood was freed or broken forever. Clay writhed against the wall, blood on his lip, teeth bared like a cornered animal. The smoke thinned just enough for the ring of armed men to see their commander trembling under Terrence's grip. The myth of invincibility was cracking. Terrence pulled the evidence drive from his vest and held it high. This, he barked, voice carrying like thunder, is your real king, not the man, the files, the lies, every bribe, every threat, every deal he made selling your lives while he grew fat on fear. Clay spat, snarling. Don't listen. He forged it. Terrence slammed him harder into the wall. Then let them see. Let them all see. The families you split apart. The men you sent to die cleaning up your mess. Every one of you, his gaze swept the room, was a number in his ledger. Nothing more. A guard stepped forward, coughing. Is it true, Clay? Another followed, lowering his rifle. You said we were protecting order. You said, shut up. Clay screamed, thrashing. His authority sounded thin, brittle. The smoke, the silence, the eyes. It all pressed in. Terrence shoved the drive into a nearby console, the projector on the wall flickering to life. Screens filled with ledgers, hidden recordings, contracts dripping with betrayal. Faces of neighbors, names of guards, evidence laid bare. The men stared, some in rage, some in shock, some in shame. The last threads holding Clay's power snapped. Terrence let go. Clay collapsed to his knees, the room turning against him. The parasite was exposed, stripped of his crown. But Terrence knew parasites didn't die easily. Clay still had fight left, and cornered beasts were the most dangerous. The projector's glow painted Clay in harsh light. Exposed, broken, no longer the untouchable commander. The guards surrounded him in silence, rifles sagging under the weight of betrayal. But Clay wasn't finished. With a guttural roar, he snatched a hidden blade from his boot and lunged. Smoke still curled around the room as steel flashed toward Terrence's chest. Time slowed. Terrence pivoted, catching Clay's wrist mid-swing. The blade nicked his side, sharp enough to draw blood but not to end him. Rage and desperation poured out of Clay as he pressed forward, teeth gritted, veins bulging. "Without me," he spat, "you're nothing. You're chaos. You're prey." Terrence locked eyes with him, voice steady even as they grappled. "No, Clay. Without you, they're free." The guards didn't hesitate this time. A rifle but cracked across Clay's back. Another slammed his arm, the blade clattering to the floor. Then fists, boots, and fury descended. The men who had once been his obedient soldiers unleashed years of buried anger. Terrence stepped back, blood on his shirt, watching, not gloating, not interfering. This wasn't his victory to claim. It was theirs. Clay hit the ground hard, still cursing, still trying to rise. But each attempt was weaker, swallowed by the storm of men he had ruled with iron chains. Finally, he lay still, the last echoes of his command drowned in silence. Smoke thinned. The room was heavy with breathing, with release, with the fragile first taste of freedom. Terrence looked at the men, bruised and bloodied, their eyes searching his for direction. The tyrant was gone. But now came the harder part, what to build in the ruins he left behind. The night bled slowly into dawn, pale light cutting through the remnants of smoke. The projector had gone dark, the damning files now etched into the memory of every man present. Clay lay bound and broken, not dead, but dethroned, his voice finally irrelevant. Terrence stood in the center of the ruined room, his shirt torn, blood drying on his side. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. What comes next, you decide. No more tyrants. No more crowns built on fear. The guards exchanged glances, some shameful, some hopeful. One spoke, voice trembling. "We followed him because we thought there was no other way. Maybe now we make one." Outside, the neighborhood stirred. Families emerging cautiously, whispers spreading like wildfire. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy with rules and fear. Children peeked from doorways not at rifles, but at the possibility of tomorrow. Terrence looked toward the horizon. He had come here seeking peace, not war. And those scars would remain on him, on them, on the land. They were no longer chains. He turned to leave, but a hand stopped him. A young guard, eyes raw with guilt, pressed the evidence drive back into his palm. "Without you, none of this would have happened, but we'll carry it forward." Terrence nodded once, silent. His war was done. Theirs had just begun. As he walked into the morning light, the neighborhood breathed for the first time in years. Not under the shadow of control, but under the fragile, powerful promise of freedom.